information, right, Andy? What do we want to do on that?
Well, make sure I understand what you're saying.
All right, we are now live
We're
on
live now.
YouTube. I don't know if we're being, if it's recorded yet. 7 o'clock, you can start, Supervisor, unless you want to wait. And Mr.
All
Wilson.
right. I welcome everyone to this special town board workshop. On June 6, 2022. Will you please join me in our salute pledge to the flag? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Town clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Chase,
Aye.
Councilman Corbin,
Here,
Councilman Morale,
Here,
Supervisor Cusie,
Here.
and Councilman Wilbur is going to be coming, or,
As far as, you know,
we'll
right?
send a quick message to him.
okay.
Go ahead, Supervisor, I'm just going to send Councilman Wilbur a quick text.
I did not bring my agenda.
We did not have agenda. I think we were going to start with the farm codes.
Then we can start with the farm code as long as the farm code representative lets the town clerk know which code he's talking about.
So I believe most of the codes that we had been working on as far as the 120-7 and the sign laws and the fencing, we've all covered that. There was two other things that I wanted to address. I guess I wanted to talk to John a little bit more about what constitutes an ag building. And the other thing I wanted to talk about with the town board is possibly changing our town code regarding commercial farms, putting farm buildings up on parcels that don't have a house on them. I feel that that's a necessity for some farms. I mean, some of these larger farms have a lot of land and they're spread out over a large area, and they may need to have a building on a parcel of land that maybe doesn't have a house or a place of occupancy on it. So I think that that's something that we should look into as a town. As far as what constitutes an ag building, John, you and I went over this at a workshop before. We disagree slightly, I guess, as far as what constitutes a place of employment. From what I have from the technical bulletin, an ag building is a structure designed and constructed to house farm equipment, farm implements, poultry, livestock, hay, grain, or other horticultural products. The structure shall not be a place of human habitation, a place of employment where agricultural products are processed, treated, or packaged, nor shall it be a place used by the public. The thing that I think we're hung up on is the place of employment. I think that we need to understand that most farms that have these buildings are gonna have employees in them. Most of these farms where they have these buildings.
hey, Dan, you're talking about a pole barn type structure, is that correct? Or,
It could be a pole barn, it could be a greenhouse, so typically a pole barn, yes.
Okay.
But any ag structure, a greenhouse is an ag structure, a
Yeah.
barn's an ag structure.
okay,
Those places, in my opinion, and from reading that statement right there, Even if those places do have employees, and most of these farms, these larger farms, are gonna have employees working in those buildings. I think that those are still considered an ag building, even though there are employees in it. When those buildings are no longer considered an ag building, is if that building is a building that has employees in it where the ag products are being processed, treated, or packaged. The processing, ag processing is taking an ag product and manipulating it into something different. For example, and even this from talking to other producers and in different towns, they consider this a bit of a gray area. But the simplest example I could say is, let's say I wanted to come to the town of Rush and I bought this piece of land and I want to put up a barn to milk cows. I raise the cows, I have a milking parlor in there, I have employees in there feeding the animals, taking care of the animals, milking the animals. That's a production and harvest facility. If on that farm, I wanted to then put up a building where I was going to take that milk and make it into cheese or butter, then that is where you are processing a product. There's a difference between production and processing. Producing the milk and harvesting the milk, that's a production area. That's an ag building. The building where I take that milk and make the cheese or the ice cream or the butter, then that would be considered a processing facility, and that would no longer be an ag building, unless it would still be an ag building if just the owner or a family member that was not being paid by 2/3 blood law was working in that facility. Then it still is an ag building, even if they are making cheese, milk, butter from the milk.
Can you hear me? My screen just froze up, so you could be talking, but I don't know. I cannot hear you. Can you hear me? Wave your hand.
Okay.
Can I
Gene,
put my
you hear
hand
us
down?
now?
I can hear you now.
All
Red
right.
light's off now.
Okay.
Sorry, then.
My TV did the same thing last night too.
I agree that this becomes a gray area, because if you've got a hay barn where you're loading or unloading hay, it's minimal employees, minimal amount of time. But when you get a more complex operation like a milking operation, and you've got complex electrical systems, plumbing systems, you've got numerous employees in there, I have more of an inkling that that's a place of employment as opposed to just an agricultural structure. But if I look through the uniform code, when they define occupancies, most agricultural uses fall under a group U, which is miscellaneous. So
Mhm.
barns and whatnot are still structures, and we're still going to issue a building permit and a C of O for those, or a C of C, depending on what it's for. So I don't know that we've got any real type of cross issue,
I just want to make sure that these buildings are still defined as ag buildings, because any of these ag buildings are exempt from being taxed for 10 years after they're built.
And my issuance of a building permit or a C of O, regardless of what's inside of it, isn't going to affect your taxation. That all comes from the assessor's office, not me.
But I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
but they have to be identified as an ag building
And,
then.
and if you come in and, if you came in and said, okay, I've got a building permit application for a barn, it's gonna be 100 by 40 or 100 by 60, whatever it is, I'd issue the building permit for it. Depending on what type of structure it was, that would determine what the required inspections are.
Right.
And when you were done, I'd give you a C of O for it. Now, anything else that you have to do zoning wise with the town, special permit, site plan, that type of stuff. Again, my process now is that I would tell you that, and it depends on what this group does with those zoning requirements. I wouldn't issue the building permit until I had the signed site plan or the special permit. Now, if that's waived for the ag buildings, then I would come in and you would give me that, and not having to do that, I'd just give you the permit.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I've talked to several producers in several different, just from Lima to Avon, Pittsford, Mendon, everywhere. And I've
Don't talk
asked,
to the village of Pittsburgh, because they gave
well, this
a
is the
tavern,
town.
the tavern, they said that they were a producer of agricultural products because they were processing hops.
But
I
that's
kinda think
processing.
that- Yeah, but now they're looking for all the brewery relief.
Yeah, but I mean, just, and I asked a bunch of these places and I go, what did you have to do? What were you required to do? And they said, well, basically, if anything, we might have brought in a hand drawing. Maybe if a Morton Building gave them a plan, they turned it in.
I'm not gonna accept a hand drawing for a major barn structure. You're gonna, if it's stick built.
No, but
yeah.
I'm saying for like where it's gonna go. Say,
Oh,
this is what this is. I mean, for the actual building of it.
Yeah.
Then no, that's not what
Right.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying for like, okay, here's such and such road. Here's 100, it's not to scale, but you know what I'm saying.
Would it be unreasonable to expect a farmer to have a tape survey map of the property where that structure is gonna go? I don't know, I'm asking.
I mean, I don't think that any of these other towns in the area require anything like
I
that.
mean, for a major structure like that, a tape survey map would be nice. We're trying to get away from the back of the envelope type thing.
Yeah, but I understand, but I mean,
But I have accepted drawings, that were reasonably well done, for fences and different.
right, and I mean, I wouldn't,
That would
I
be-
wouldn't say on the back of an envelope, I mean, that would be a little bit extreme, but I mean, to have something come in and if they said, if I had the back of the sheet of paper and I went, here's this road, this is 110 feet, there's a existing building here that's, whatever, 200 feet back, this is from here, and I kind of drew what that barn was gonna be. I think that most towns look at that for ag buildings and that's acceptable, and I don't see why we should.
We'd have to look at that, I mean, we gotta have some reasonableness to this. I'm not saying, now, again, you would have to eliminate the need for a site plan or a special permit, because that's gonna be an engineer.
But I think for most ag buildings, that if it is an ag building, then you should be exempt. I mean,
That's up to the town board.
Okay,
to
but-
enact those.
and I
exemptions.
think that's what we should do as a town board then, because I talked to, I go, did you have to do like anything special? And they were like, no, I think I drew a map and I said, this is what size the barn's gonna be. This is where it's going. They came out, I got the building permit. They might have came and inspected the whole stuff like that. They,
Oh, we would do the normal inspection.
right, and that's,
I'm just trying to make sure that I have some sort of an accurate datum point that, you know, it's just, we didn't draw this, you know, just willy-nilly, you know, it'd be nice to, you know, so many feet from this or something.
right, well,
just
and,
something
and,
to
and
identify.
that's acceptable. I think that's fine.
No,
And I'm not
okay
opposed
with
to that.
We could work with that.
Yeah, and but I just want to make sure that when these buildings are going up, even though they're gonna have employees in them, I mean, they still need to be considered ag buildings and,
Yes, They
and,
will,
okay,
they will.
because at the last workshop we had,
Well, there were some other, we got to separate all the different pieces.
Okay.
We're going to do a building permit, we're going to do a
Yes,
CFO.
yeah.
And we'll set up the inspections based on what's actually going into the construction. Obviously, if you're just doing a hay barn, there's going to be fewer inspections than if you're going to use it for.
but
You
that
know,
might
bunch of
not
different
necessarily
ones.
be true either. I mean, not to throw myself under the bus, but I mean, even some hay barns, they're gonna have electricity and like, who knows, you're gonna maybe run an elevator or whatever.
Again, you're not going to have a 220 system for a welding machine and refrigeration.
Possibly not, but that brings up my next thing is, I mean, bringing up 220 for a welder, I mean, a farm shop, that's an ag building also, even
It
with,
is, but you've also got greases, you've got fuels, you've got equipment, you've got hazards in there that isn't just storing hay anymore.
well, I understand that, but that still doesn't make it a non-ag
I
building.
didn't say it made it a non-ag building, it just means that I'm gonna be a little tougher on my inspections.
I mean, as far as the electrical, or what do you mean? I mean, are you gonna come in every couple years and look to see where oil, I mean, I'm just
Do
asking.
I do that at your house?
No, I know.
Once I
It-
give you a C of O, you've got your
Okay.
C of O. Now, if you were to add a major system, you would come in and you would get a building permit to
Yeah.
add that. Okay, and this is as much for your protection as it is mine,
Yeah.
because if you have a C of O for a hay barn with just 110, a few lights, you burn the place down because you got a welding machine in there and a bunch of other stuff, what's your insurance company gonna do? They're gonna come to me and say, let me see the C of O for that. And I'm not gonna be able to give a, well, I'm not willing to take that chance.
I don't know if they would, maybe what if,
I guarantee they would.
I would say that that's not true, only because what if you had a piece of equipment that, you know, the shop was full and you pulled a piece of equipment into the hay barn because it was rainy and you had a spare minute to work on it and you brought a portable welder in, would that, you know,
We're talking a different situation.
but I mean,
We're
it could
talking a
happen,
different
but I
situation.
understand, but it could happen, so the insurance company's gonna come to you
But
and,
that's a different set of circumstances, rather than I've got a hardwired system that I never got a permit for,
okay,
which New York State says you need to do.
okay.
So, yes, I'll work with you, but again, we've got to do things on the up and up,
Okay.
and, you know. And again, there's risk that attaches to the town as well. If you burn the place down and I didn't issue a permit, they're gonna look at me too. So there's a lot of protections here that are for everybody's benefit. But
I just
to
haven't
answer your
heard of
question, I
anyone.
can work with you.
Okay.
Well, how many barns have we burnt down in the county?
Well, I'm not, I mean, I know one that collapsed, that was built within the past 5 years, it collapsed this winter.
Don't hire that guy for your next barn.
They sell a lot of barns, more than you would think. But I could ask and see, but I don't think they went after the town for not doing the proper inspections on that cow barn.
Oh, you'd be surprised what they've come after town.
Oh, I'm gonna mark that down. And I'm curious
I
too.
think the bottom line is that an ag building is an ag building. And, you know, we can look at, you know, what are the opportunities for employment? I don't think we're gonna have many with habitation, and we'll have some with access to the public. And we'll work on all those accordingly.
Right.
But once I give you the C of O, it's not like I'm coming in every year
Right.
and, you know, demanding another inspection.
But I just wanted to be clear that even though, because before it seemed like we were butting heads a bit on the place of employment.
Yeah.
So I want to be clear that ag buildings can have employees. I mean,
Oh, yes,
they can. I mean,
And
it's
I'm
still
gonna
an
look
ag
to it-
building.
I'm gonna look to a degree as to how extensive that operation is.
Okay,
That's
but,
all.
but we can do that to a degree. That's a little more restrictive than what this technical bulletin from the building standards and codes of New York says. Like, so for that table that, you and Lori and zoning worked out, where you went for, like, so if I came in and said I wanted to, I'm gonna build an ag barn.
Oh,
The
flow
checklist
chart.
almost,
Yeah,
flow chart.
yeah.
But yours is it a place of human habitation? No. Go on to the next thing. Is it a place of public occupation? No. You go on to the next thing.
Is it employment?
Employment. But I think yours should say exactly what this says, a place of employment where ag products are processed, treated, or, 'Cause that's-
It would be extraneous language because we're talking about,
I don't
we're
think so.
talking
It's
about
just,
whether it's an ag building or not. So that would be repetitious, but
well, I don't think it would be repetitious. All you're doing is saying, I mean, it's exactly it's exactly the way the questions are laid out in this.
it is. But again, it's going to come down to my determination. And it's really not going to affect your status as an agricultural building. It's just what's happening within there and is it documented or not?
I would feel more comfortable with that language being in there as far as, because if I'm building that, if I want, say I'm gonna go back to dairy again. I want to build that barn. Is it a place of human habitation? Nope, there's no living quarters in it. Is it open to the public? Nope, no public coming in. Is it a place of employment? Yes, it is. But is it a place of employment where it's being processed, treated, or packaged?
That's irrelevant.
No, well, no, it's not, because it says it right in this bulletin that that's what it is.
I think we're arguing about nothing.
But I want, I don't think it is nothing. I believe that should be,
What are you afraid of?
I'm not afraid of anything necessarily, but I don't want somebody, maybe you understand it. But let's say another building inspector or code enforcer comes in and says, well, it's a place of employment. It says it right here, right in our flow sheet. It's a place of
If
employment.
you've got a C of O for it, what's the issue?
But what if they don't give you the C of O? Because it's a place,
Why wouldn't they give you? the
because
C
it's
of
a
O?
place of employment. They wouldn't give you, it wouldn't be, maybe they wouldn't consider it an ag building at that point. And then what would it be? A commercial?
No, it would still be an ag building where you're processing.
But we're not processing, we're
Well-
producing.
Okay, well,
I mean, no, but that's
all
a
right, one of
difference.
those three, you're either processing, producing,
No, you're processing, treating,
okay.
or packaging.
I don't see an issue.
Well, let me try to come in between. Is there a problem of not having, having that in there? Those three terms taken
Well-
right out of the bulletin? I always like to weigh both sides as to,
We can put that in the language. I don't know where you're gonna put it, but.
Right in the flow chart under employee.
Well, the flow charts, that was just to demonstrate what the process might be. That's not gonna become an official town document. That was just for the purposes of discussion.
Okay,
What we've got to make sure is that whatever code section we adapt, it's got to say that a determination will be made whether a barn or a structure is an ag structure. And that's going to be based on the definitions that we establish for what's a
Okay.
commercial farm, what's this. But we're going to look at it, any building inspector should look at it, that it is an ag building, and we can always rely back on the uniform building code that says an ag building, which they list, most of them in there are a group U miscellaneous structure. And it would be built along the same lines as any other structure. We would look at it. What do I need? The drawings, the location of where it's going, and then I would develop, here's the standard inspections that I would do, and it's going to be footers, framing, joist connections, roofing, that type of stuff. But again, the determination that it's an ag structure is going to be based on this bulletin, talking with some of the farmers, your dad primarily. I think we're in a pretty good place where we can say, okay, we know that these are what these buildings are being used for. I have no problem considering them an agricultural structure, but we're still going to enforce the code in that we're going to issue a permit, do inspections, and give a CO.
right, good, and that's fine.
Yeah.
John, are you opposed to adding the documentation that Dan is suggesting under that?
If we want to, it's gonna be kind of, again, if the town wants that in there and feels better about it, that's fine. I'm gonna go in and look at it and make a determination. And it's basically what I just stated, that, this is an ag building. There's gonna be a few other features perhaps if there is access to the public, or if it's, if there's habitation there, and I would refer to the ones I'm familiar with are horse barns where they've got a stable manager living up above. That's gonna have a much more rigorous inspection because it's got the
That's got living
human
quarters.
habitation in it. So that's gonna be a lot different than a hay barn, a milking barn, a storage barn, a work shed. The only other structure that I would get a little antsy about is if you had a structure that was going to house fertilizer, chemicals, those types of things, we might have to have some separation based on the building code. And again, you don't want a lot of those chemicals,
And we've had the fire
stored right
department
next-
come out and showed them all where stuff
And
is.
again, that's totally irrelevant. I mean, this is, the building code says that if you're gonna store this type of chemical, this is what you've gotta have. And that's the only situation I can see where you would get into a more rigorous application. Just because, you don't want fertilizer next to spray chemicals next to, and I don't know all the products, but.
Right, yeah, but I mean, a
Then
lot of
we'd be-
those facilities are designed for fertilizer and chemical
And
storage.
if they were, that would say so on the drawings and it would have all of that incorporated into it because the architect's doing that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't know if this is the right point to insert this, but I would be in favor of adding the documentation that Dan describes.
would it be okay to reference this technical bulletin? Or
Well,
would that-
so the question I guess I have is this then a process we want to see codified in the town code? Right, so, and if it is, then that you would want to reference the technical bulletin and you would define place of appointment. And it would include the language, treated, process, and practice.
So then, in the town code, we'll have
Reference
to,
that. and then
we'll have to
some
find it
definitions.
where, for, as far as definition, there's, in the building section of the code, have a definition of ag buildings, it says reference
And
that.
then reference the habitation, the employment, and the
Process of
Right.
treating-
Would-
access to the
would-
public.
Yep, we'll put that in there. We'll put that all in there and then as a backup to that, say, reference technical bulletin.
Yeah.
So,
I think that works, if that works for you.
that's fine with me.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna defer to the town clerk at this point and the town attorney. Do we know which section of the code specifically is this 120-7 still? Do we know?
No, because we're gonna be
Okay.
in the building section. So we're gonna have to go to the building section of the town
Okay, so we
code
need to.
and figure out
look that
where to,
It's
where to
probably-
define the certain buildings, whether
Probably
it's,
somewhere in 36.
yeah,
my guess.
commercial buildings, if there's commercial buildings, residential buildings, and then we'd have to have a different section for ag buildings if there's not something there.
The section and the date.
Yeah,
Probably somewhere in chapter 36, but it's one of those changes that you would want to make sure that
Right,
everything in the town code is being changed accordingly, which
Correct.
was, I think, David maybe.
and John had alluded to that as we're moving through here,
Right.
to try and keep things, so we're not doing it and then doubling back and,
I would also include in any provision a process, at least like a note or two saying that building inspector or the code enforcement officer, or the building inspector in this case, would make the determination, which then would be available to the ZBA
yeah.
to determine, because
okay. that's
as we started off by saying, this is a gray area, and it's a very fact specific, depending on the specific facts, and you change one fact in the analysis.
The
has changed,
determinations.
Determination may change, and so you should have a process by which it can be appealed to the ZBA.
So going back to that, now that we're in that, for the town building code, defining of an ag building. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels about this. John, I think we spoke about this at the last workshop or touched on it at some point. As far as allowing an ag building to be built on a parcel of land that does,
Before you go there, though, are we all good with,
I'm fine with,
The
Just
only
did?
other question I would have is,
Bless you.
are we gonna tie this to the definition of a commercial farm versus the gentleman farmer?
Yes,
Oh,
I think when, in the definition, we'll have for commercial farming
Okay,
operations.
I just want to verify.
Yeah.
that. Okay.
And that being said, the same moving forward onto the next thing I wanted to talk about was having a building on a parcel that does not have a residence. I think that as a town, we should have that in our code, that that's something that we would allow.
That's very important to bring up, but before we move to that, I just want to make sure, I want to hear you guys say that you are together.
I think, I was gonna say, I thought it was a very good conversation because I've read things, Dan has read things, he's done research, I've done research. And, you know, we've kind of come to a meeting of the minds that, you know, we'll do the permitting process, you know, once we've made that determination. And we've got parameters for what that determination is. I'm good with that.
Good, then I don't have to go away from tonight with the angst that I had the last time we met.
No, we're
Fine, yeah, no, and the last time, John, I don't think you took anything, I didn't take anything personal, but we just, I
We've
think
both
that,
got interest to protect.
well,
It's-
well, and I think that what started it off on the wrong foot was where I think people thought I wanted to not have any building inspection or C of O, and that was never my intent
No,
going
that's
into it.
whatsoever, yeah.
Right, and that was never my intent going
Blame
into
the attorney. Say blame the attorney.
it. I didn't want to say it, Robert, but.
No, I think it required some discussion, some investigation, and like I said, I think there's a meeting of the minds that I can move with.
Yeah, and I, like I said, I have no issue with the building permit, having the inspections done. Nobody wants to put up a barn and have it come down.
Disagree.
Or they don't want to have any trouble. So, you know, and the last building inspector, I'll be honest, the hay barn we built over on the corner of number 6 and Wilkinson Road, he came in and did the final inspection and he said, that up there is not right. And Dad looked at it and he goes, no, it's not. Called the builders back in and they fixed it. So it's good to have that second look. So.
So Robert's going to look through chapter 36
And related chat.
and related chapters, and who is coming up with the definition of, who's coming up with the definitions? Are Dan and Dan gonna be?
Well, you
coming
know,
up-
we already talked about definitions under the fencing code. We, between commercial, you know, versus,
And that's kind of that's kind of the whole umbrella over this. And then, so now we're gonna encompass buildings for those commercial farms that we established the first time. So now we gotta take that umbrella for the commercial farm and see what's covered under that. So for that commercial farm, now we're gonna cover some of these ag buildings. And then going on to the next thing, also under that same umbrella of a commercial farm, I think we need to look into allowing these commercial farm operations to erect buildings on a parcel that does not have a residence on it.
Are you happy with the last?
I don't know how anyone else feels about that. I feel that it's a necessity, as I said, as this meeting started. The farms are getting larger and larger and they're spread out further. And I think that as things progress, there's going to be more of a need maybe to have buildings that are not right on the actual home farm site. And they may need to put a building up for hay storage or equipment storage or something like that off-site. And I think that commercial farm operations should be exempt from having to have a residence on that parcel before they can erect a barn or any ag structure for that matter, barn, greenhouse, whatever it may be.
And if we were to go that route to change it in the code, everything we just talked about before though was still the same process of applying for a permit.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes,
It's just everything we talked about there, but I think we should also also incorporate being able to erect a barn on a parcel of land that does not have a residence for commercial in a residential area, because that's where the hangup is, right?
To be clear, so are we, or is the town board still in favor, as the code currently requires, a site plan being required for that building? I understand that that's different than permitting it, but also requiring.
I mean, as far as a site plan, what are we, how detailed? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you were gonna do that, a site plan for an ag building like that,
The agreement that I've got right now, well, actually, it's not an agreement. What I've suggested is that for any first-time structure on an R20 or an R30 property, I am going to refer the applicant to the planning board for a site plan before I issue the building permit, whether that's a residence or a barn. And if it's a barn right now, or an accessory structure, pole barn, shed, whatever, they would have to get a variance from the zoning board first, because right now, R20 and R30, you have to have a primary residence before you can build that accessory
Right,
structure.
so that's what you were talking about to
Yes.
start with, so I threw on the additional consideration
Right.
of, there's also a site plan to consider here, so
I-
even if it may be permitted, if we change the code to make it permitted, they're still going to need a site plan as it currently reads.
I think as far as having any kind of a site, I think the drawings that we were talking about earlier.
And that's a far cry from a site plan.
Right, and so I think they should be exempt from having that site plan. I think they can put the building up. They need to submit to the town the size of the building, where it's located.
And
That's my
I
opinion
just
on it.
need to know what the town decides, so that when I get a building permit application, I refer it properly.
Right,
And I have said that I think there's 5 or 6 other zoning districts. Residential trailer park, residential townhome, residential multiple dwelling, commercial, industrial, light industrial, and restricted business. There's one other in there. If I get an application for a structure in any of those zones, I'm also going to hold it up and refer them to the planning board for a site plan, either to be created or to be updated to include that structure. So we would have to look at a couple of different processes if you're going to do that, because I think right now it's R20 and R30 have the restriction against an accessory building. And I don't think that an agricultural building is a permitted use in any of those other districts. I'd have to look through all of those districts to see
right.
what's permitted.
Well, I know,
So there'd be
we know it's not in commercial.
You know,
Right, we already looked at that, right?
So, but again, there's where you've got multiple code sections that we're gonna have to be very specific, what do we allow and what don't we?
Okay.
So, again, I don't want to complicate the discussion, but, so R20, A5, accessory uses are permitted, provided all the following conditions are met, and there's A through F, and they are difficult to be met. So, John, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you say accessory uses are not permitted in R20, that's unless they fulfill those
Exactly.
5 conditions. So what we'll be changing, if that's what the town board wants to do, is make them permitted, we'll have to mess with those 5 conditions
You're also
or remove
You're
them.
also gonna have to go to 120-69, which talks about the site
That's the
plan
site
and the
plan,
special
that's the
permit.
Right, but this is only for commercial ag buildings. This isn't for,
Okay,
The gentleman farmer that wants to put
Yes.
up a 40 by 40 pole.
correct.
so maybe it's as easy as adding a subdivision and saying accessory uses that are commercial farming operations do not have to fulfill the
Correct.
conditions cited above.
Correct.
and our presenter is here.
Pardon me?
Our presenter is here.
Oh,
It's okay. We've. had
that's
a
the
lot to
guy you
get
were
through.
telling us about?
You've met him.
I just want to make a comment, and that is, if you look into why site plans exist, it's hard for me to correlate that with a farm building in the middle of 50 acres, for example. And I have a struggle within me determining whether a site plan in the middle of a 50-acre field needs the same site plan that a residential development or a residential single family on a lot would require. So you know what my feeling is about
And I
that.
don't disagree. I think the one thing they'd be looking at is, either county or state DOT is gonna look at line of sights where you put your driveway into that.
That is a
building,
valid
type of
issue.
thing, But it isn't the same degree as, what are the drainage swales, what are the leach field requirements, what are, there's a lot of things that you wouldn't need.
So would we assume that there wouldn't be leach fields required, that you're not going to have any of that in a building like this?
Unless it was something that they were processing, and Dan would have more information than me on something like that.
Yeah, for most of those, you may have, in some of those buildings, you may have, if you have a bathroom or something like that, then you would probably have a septic system where you might have some leach lines. But as Jerry said, I mean, if it's on a larger open parcel, I don't really see where you would run into any issue with contaminating anything or affecting neighbors or anything to that nature.
What if it was on a smaller lot though? I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It could be.
I'm trying
I
to,
think Monroe County Health is the
Okay.
way.
Right, if you're
Right.
putting in a septic system, then yeah,
Monroe
then
County
you,
Health does all of the septic work. We don't get involved.
Yeah.
with that.
no,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, what if I am that commercial and I've got thousands of acres, but I want to put it on this
50
half-acre
parcel.
parcel. I'm still a commercial farmer.
Well,
I'm just-
then you're gonna have to say, we're gonna have to look into setbacks as well. 'Cause
Right.
That smaller parcel, that half acre, are they gonna fit within the zoning setbacks?
Right.
Regards to 25 and 25.
which we already have the established setbacks for ag buildings. So they
It's
just have
certainly
to
going
fall
to
within
require more
those.
restrictions in that scenario. You just-
Well, no, I think it needs us to do our due diligence of trying to think of all possible.
I meant restrictions in terms of site plan. A full site plan versus a partial site plan
Or any at all.
or any
at
other.
all, right?
Actually, it may be a non-issue for what you guys are talking about. If we consider the pole barn. This is really actually an interpretation question. The current issue, the reason I brought it up, prior to issuing a building permit for construction of a building, except an accessory building on a lot in any district shall require a site plan. If it's the pole barn is considered an accessory building or whatever barn is considered an accessory building, then it actually doesn't even need a site plan. But I don't know if it can be considered an accessory
We have to
building.
change the
But
definition of
R20
accessory
says you
building.
can't build it without the primary structure.
Right,
But if we change that,
No, I'm just saying.
right,
that's where
right,
you
but if
gotta
so,
look at-
but if, so if we put that into that for the R20, if we take that restriction out for ag buildings, then that automatically makes,
Commercial.
correct.
John, how would you handle let's say a 25-acre parcel that's been put into a perpetual wild?
Right now, with the codes that we have, I would require a site plan.
Even though nothing would ever be built around it?
I think so, yeah, just because the code says, I mean, what are they coming to me for a building permit for? What are they gonna do on that 25-acre parcel that's forever wild, why are they coming to the town for an action?
Could they even
That's what you
build
have
on
to look
something
at.
that's considered forever wild though?
I don't know
I
the
don't-
answer to that.
No,
I think it depends, and Robert can correct me, I think it depends on how the parcel was segregated into this forever whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to do-
normally, I think, I think for certain ag buildings that are allowed, but they also have you, a lot of times they'll have you set aside a parcel for buildings on a lot of that.
Yeah, and again, it depends on what the structure of the agreement is. And
Yeah.
We would have to go to Robert
Yeah.
and say.
Not one
interpret
size
this
fits
for
all,
me. Yeah.
right?
Depending
So,
on, like a land trust or
Yeah.
Right.
whatever the designation is.
yeah,
if we knew that nothing else was gonna be done to that property other than the owner's use for life. You know, Dan wants to put his 600 acres into a land trust. Well, then he's gonna continue running it, and he's gonna continue running it for 45 more years.
I don't know if I got that long, but.
And again, it would depend on what they're gonna do. We'd have to look at the terms of the land trust and say what is allowable, and then go from there based on the codes.
But I think we can null and void all that if we go through and say that a commercial ag structure is allowed in these residential areas without having a house on it. It's considered an accessory structure, which would exempt it from the site plan. Right? Is that correct? If,
Yeah, again, it's John question, but yes, I brought that up because accessory structure, accessory use does not require a site plan. It's the only exception to when a building, otherwise when a building constructed, it has to go get a site plan.
so basically, if we take care of that as far as allowing ag structures in these residential areas without a residence,
And then go to the
commercial.
site-
Primary
then go to the site plan section and do some tweaking there.
we can, but if that ag building's considered an accessory, I guess we'd have to define accessory.
Yeah, well, again.
That's
I
why I'm
just-
deferring to John, because I don't think it's clearly defined
Right,
in there yet.
so we'll have to tweak it there to define it.
Do we want to allow Mr. Corona to, we'll take a break from farming and,
Do we have any more,
oh,
I don't know, do we have any more discussion? I think, as far as on this goes,
so where are we on the vacant land then? Is this a Robert thing? Is this a John thing? Is this a you two thing that is going to put some draft together for us to review?
It's a 4 of them thing.
I think, it's kind of what I was thinking. Dan and I could probably look into this a little bit. Robert,
Yeah,
there's-
this will be
John?
one of the ones we'll have to make a lot of
yeah,
wholesale
Yeah, and I'll
changes. to the
start
code.
looking at between the different code sections to see where there's cross
Right.
referencing
And we'll
that could be.
kind of work
Yeah.
together on it and get it narrowed down. I'm fine with that.
I
And
think that would be good to have some drafts based on what we just discussed.
gonna be by the next town board,
No.
not this one, not the following one. It's gonna take some work, just so everyone's aware.
It's
that-
okay, better to get it right once instead of having to redo it.
Right. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that it's gonna take a little bit of tweaking. And then
Okay,
I had one other thing, but we'll do it after this.
Okay. We will do it afterwards. So we're going to transition supervisor to Pete Smart Monroe. If you'd like to bring a chair up, sir. This is our owl here, Matt, so you don't want to sit too close to it or your face will be fill up the whole screen. It's up to you. You can come a little closer.
Sure. Sure, and I apologize for my appearance. I just came from a kickball game,
I warned them.
very serious kickball game.
you told us.
Did you win?
We did not win.
Oh.
Unfortunately. No, the other team, they were really good and it was good. It was like 10-16 or whatever at the end. So, I mean, we had a good time. So, I appreciate y'all for giving me the time tonight, first of all. My name is Matt Corona. I work for a nonprofit called the Climate Solutions Accelerator. So we're a small nonprofit based in Rochester, but we're focused on the whole Genesee Finger Lakes region. So, our focus is on how do we bring climate solutions to our region? Like, we have a very unique region. We've got a diverse range of people. We've got a big city in Rochester, and then we've got a lot of rural area with a lot of agriculture. So we're looking at like, how can we bring everybody together around looking at what's the future for our region in, addressing climate change and, doing that with everybody in mind. So, really just want to make sure everyone's at the table when we're talking about, what do we want to do? So, anyway, I can get more into my organization, but what I do is I run a campaign called Heat Smart Monroe, so Monroe County. And essentially it's an outreach and education campaign around home energy efficiency and clean heating and cooling. So what we're trying to do, number one, is to help homes reduce their energy usage by making insulation and air sealing improvements, improving the building envelope, keeping that heat in the home in the winter so that homes are more energy efficient. And then two, helping homes switch off of fossil fuels for heating in the winter, which, you know, the majority of buildings heat with natural gas or propane or oil. And so New York State, as well as, you know, everywhere, you know, eventually we need to electrify all of our buildings. We want to make sure that happens, you know, when it makes sense to do that, make sure consumers get the right information so they can make an informed decision about their heating system at their home. So we're, you know, basically a grant funded campaign from the state to help homes, you know, be an unbiased guide for people to get information about, you know, how heat pumps work. So the one thing we're recommending is homes make building envelope improvements, and then two, switch to heat pumps for heating and cooling. So I can get into what heat pumps are, how they work and everything, but we want to do education about the technology, about the incentives from the state, which there's some great incentives actually, which make them very affordable, and then help people find local contractors. So we do outreach events where we like go to libraries, do presentations, we come to talk to groups that meet, you know, we've talked to some clubs before, neighborhood organizations, that kind of thing. Give them the information, and then I do like background project management where we help folks figure out what makes sense for their home and their financial situation. And then there are some grants we help people apply for, other state incentives, financing, that sort of thing, and then find contractors. So we don't make money off of the interactions we have with anybody. We just want to help people get the information to make a decision about their home. And I would love for everyone we worked with to install a heat pump. It doesn't make sense for every single home, right? But I just want to help people get the information so they can consider it at least and investigate, you know, does it make sense for me? You know, would it be savings in the long term or what? So yeah, that's what we're doing. And essentially, okay, before I'm going to pause here, questions about Heat Smart in general, before I get into what Amber and Supervisor and I have been talking about for the town.
No,
Questions?
you had done a presentation before.
Yes, yeah,
This
so
is
if you all
our
remember-
one-on-one with you,
Yes,
so.
do you all remember that when I talked? Okay.
Yep.
I was on Zoom, so I know it's a little different. So why this is relevant for the town. So we're just doing our campaign in Monroe County. We do outreach events and all that, but why it's synergistic to work together, what I'm proposing is that, so the town can get credit in the Clean Energy Communities program. Are you all familiar with that? So that's a program through NYSERDA, which is the same state agency that funds my campaign. So the town, one of the high impact action items for the Clean Energy Communities campaign, I'm just gonna call it CEC from now on, just so everybody knows. For the CEC campaign or program, you can get 500 points as the town for doing a clean heating and cooling campaign, which is already what I'm doing in Monroe County, I'll say that. In addition to the 500 points, once we've completed the campaign, the town can get $5,000 in grant funds to run I think it's I'm not exactly sure there's some restrictions on what they can use it for, but I think it's for anything sustainability related. I think you can use it for like EV chargers or whatever you want. I maybe you would know more about exactly how that might be
Lighting.
used. But it's $5,000 from NYSERDA for the town. And so what I'm basically proposing, and we've done this with other towns, we're doing it with Penfield right now. We're almost finished with Penfield actually, but we just submitted our application for for Pittsburgh, is that we partner together, the town and Heat Smart Monroe, on a sort of micro outreach campaign in the town where we would do some outreach events, maybe like at the library, here at the town hall, where we'd be leveraging the town's sort of maybe the newsletter, ways to get the word out in the town. And then we get people to come to an outreach event. I talk about, you know, the free services that we offer. It just helps to have the town's name on like an event we're doing, to say like the town's endorsing this, like, you know, there are a lot of like salespeople that are, we're not a salesperson. Yeah, the reason we're working with, you would like to work with us is because we are helping people make the best decision for them, not selling them a piece of equipment. So it really helps to have the town's name when we do outreach stuff. So all we have to do, the only goal is to get that $5,000 and the 500 points, or get 3 people in the town to do something to their house, whether it's a heat pump or insulating their attic, or making any upgrade to their house, whether it's in energy efficiency or heating, cooling, whatever. So really low goal, like only 3. It's like not that, we can definitely get 3 people to use some of the grants or something and get the incentives. And the best time to do it is when you need a new heating system. So if you could find people that are at that point, that's when I make those notes. But I will slow down and say that, essentially want to partner together on doing like a mini outreach campaign in Rush. Does that make sense to everybody? What are the thoughts? Any thoughts on that? Question?
I have a question.
Yes.
I know based on your previous information that converting from a fossil fuel heating system to a heat pump makes a qualifying event. How about moving from a heat pump to a heat pump because the original heat pump is out of date?
That's a good question. Actually, I am not sure of the answer to that. I don't know. I will ask. I am not positive. I want to say no, like my instinct is going to tell me no, but I will get an answer on that. I will say that it's most people in Monroe County and probably in the town of Rush are going to have natural gas. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe the town has data on that, because I know Rush is sort of getting in the area where maybe there's not as much natural gas infrastructure, but
Yeah,
Does
there's a
anyone
lot
know?
of, there's a lot of propane.
propane as well, is that common? Okay.
Yeah, and fuel oil in some houses. But yeah.
So one interesting thing is that, so there's 2 different types of heat pumps in general. There's air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. So ground source heat pump is the same thing as geothermal. So, and the reason I make them so distinct is that they're very different investments. And I always describe this to my clients is that, and the reason I bring this up is because anyone who's switching from propane or fuel oil to a heat pump is going to save a lot of money per year. Like it's going to pay itself off in like 3 to 7 years in general in a given home.
Even
So-
with the electrical cost
Yes.
being higher.
Well, so the thing is, when you're electric is like, so when you consider, you're probably familiar with like electric resistance heating, like electric baseboard.
No, I'm talking about the electric to run the pumps. They take a lot of electricity to run those pumps.
They do, right? But even so, compared to the cost of fuel oil or propane, you'll save thousands of dollars per year. It's a significant savings, like enough to make this it like almost a no-brainer to install a heat pump. And but it's different for natural gas because natural gas is a lot cheaper than propane or fuel oil. So when you're switching, so that in that situation, it depends. If you're switching from natural gas, it's for air source, you're going to spend around the same for heating every year, switching from natural gas to air source. Ground source is more efficient. So switching from natural gas to ground source, you'll definitely save money. It won't pay itself off super fast, but that's only for switching from natural gas. If you have propane or fuel oil, you'll definitely save a lot of money. The dynamics of that change all the time because even from last year to this year, the prices of energy have changed a ton.
Right.
Fuel oil and propane and natural gas and electricity have gone up a ton at different rates a little bit. So it's always changing day to day, even, right? You go to the gas pump and it's like, changes all the time, right? So they're very volatile, but in general, propane or fuel oil or electric resistance. So if you have electric baseboard, you're going to save a lot of money switching to either type of heat pump. Natural gas, it really depends. So that's the general sort of overview, but every home again is different. Some homes are going to have to do like insulating and air sealing work before they install a heat pump, which is also something we advise for people, but that's going to save you money no matter what heating system you have as well. So what we generally do is try to help people, figure out first of all, get a free home energy audit. That's the first step where you figure out. You have a contractor come to your home. It's totally free. We help people figure this out, establish, get this up with a contractor where they will look in your home, come through with a thermal energy camera and tell you, are there opportunities to do building envelope improvements? Do you have to do that before you get a heat pump? Or what, so, they'll be able to tell you, is your furnace, nearing the end of its life, or does it have another 5-10 years in it? They do tests and all that stuff, and that part is totally free. And that's the number one thing I always recommend for every home is to get a free home energy audit. Sorry, that was such a roundabout answer to your.
No, it makes sense. So that's good. The only other question, so if the town does, and maybe you touched on this and I missed it. Is there a cost to the town for working with you guys? What's the cost to the town for?
Good question. Yeah. So my campaign, I work for a nonprofit. We're totally grant funded. We don't take any compensation at all. Like for us, we're advancing our goals of, helping people access heat pump technology, which again is like a climate solution in a number of ways. And, but optionally, the town, if they would like to spend money on like a mailer or on flyers or something, and I think I sent this to Amber in advance, is the a la carte menu for support from the town. So if you have that in front of you, that is like what the town could do optionally to support us, right?
It's the single page one.
Yeah. So that is like, of course, we'd love for the town to help, spread the word about any presentations we might do with the library on social media, through a newsletter, any avenues the town has to get the word out about us. So what we're looking for from the town, right, is number one, to help get the word out about what we're doing, about any presentations we would have. If the town would like to sponsor a newsletter, or a mailer, or anything else financially that were even like a Facebook boost or something that would help us get the word out, great, amazing. I would love that, but by no means required. We already are set up to do a lot of the outreach stuff. So what I would need from the town, absolutely, is a little bit of help on filling out the scoping document, which is basically the application for the town to do the campaign to NYSERDA. So this is the document where you submit, say, hey, NYSERDA, this is what we want to do for our CEC campaign. Can we start the campaign to earn the credit? And they say, okay, great. We have gotten them approved already, so it's not a big lift. I would just need to work with maybe someone from the library to figure out some dates for the events, and then work together on, what are the channels the town has for promotion. And so it's really not a big lift. I would maybe take 1 or 2 of your time for like an hour. We could probably work it out in an hour if I had, so it's not like a big thing. So that would be the number one thing. And then
Matt, can I?
Sure. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to refresh what I just heard and what you asked. So we're hearing your proposal to this board.
Yes.
And the first step that we would have to do if we decide we want to move forward on this is work on this scoping document to get it filled out properly. Is that, and is that correct?
Yeah, other towns have passed a town resolution to do the campaign. You're more than welcome to do that. I don't require it. NYSERDA does not require it, but for example, in the town of Brighton, that's what they did. We're working on the scoping document with them now. They chose that they wanted to do that first. So if that's something y'all wanted to do, totally understandable, and you can vote on that or whatever at your next meeting, great. But from my end and from the state's end, all we would have to do is complete that document, work together to complete that, yes.
And so if this board decided to move forward and we worked on this with you and got it filled out and coordinated the events, because that's part of the scoping document, all that is required.
Yep.
What is the typical turnaround time from NYSERDA that you've experienced?
Yeah, for our left in Penfield, we had submitted that one in the fall, and that one maybe took like 2 weeks to get approval on. We just submitted the Pittsford, so many P names of towns. Pittsford scoping document. This was last Friday, and we have not heard back yet. And so it's been a week and a half almost.
So then once NYSERDA gives the approval, then the process kicks in.
Yeah, so we would maybe plan some outreach events and then we can start, well, we'd probably find dates in advance. We can reserve at the library or something and then, and then we could just get ahead on promotion. So we can start talking about, okay, making a flyer and, I brought some of these, so first I'll pass around, this is our, brochure that I use when we're, with literally anybody.
Yeah. John, I can share if you haven't.
I think I've got just enough. Oh,
She
shit.
needs one.
Here, give this one to Pamela.
Okay, here you go, Pam.
So with about 10 minutes and Matt to bring us together for our
Yes.
time frame.
Um,
Is there an end time frame? Or is it once you have fulfilled the requirements that we have all agreed to? And then you start meeting with people? Is there more the town has to do beyond that?
no, so another great thing is that I already have the whole back-end system set up to track our clients when we're, so the only thing we need to do, once we've submitted the scoping document, I've gotten the go-ahead, is to then submit to show NYSERDA that we finished the campaign, which means we met the goals. We had to, I think, engage 5 people and then get 3 people to do something to their house. And I've got the whole back-end system to track what people have done. We have to meet our goals for our campaign, whatever. And we've already done that, so I'm not really worried about that. But, we've got a whole database where we work with our contractors to track if anyone's done anything or if they've gotten an energy audit, where they are in the process. So all we have to do once we've been approved is do the outreach events as the plan, as we put together on the plan. And then once we've achieved the 3 minimum, we submit to NYSERDA. It's literally just a list that says the person, their address, what they did, and it's that easy. It's like a 1-page document. So.
Okay.
And we could go forever. We could go above and beyond and keep going, but as far as what the town needs to get that $5,000 and the 500 points is just submit the 3 people who have done the work, basically.
All right.
Not on subject, but just curious. A pressure door is the exclusive measure of air leakage?
Good question. So there's a few things that they'll look at when they're determining air leakage. So that is a part of the free home energy audit that happens. So the first thing is we'll do an outreach event, right? And then we'll talk to someone who's interested. I have a one-on-one phone call with them. And then I help them schedule a free home energy audit with one of our contractors, which I could talk. We did a vetting process to pick some contractor partners. People don't have to work with them, but I recommend them. And then they do the free home energy audit where they'll do the blower door test. And yes, that's really the thing they're trying to use to assess air leakage of the home. That gives them an actual figure they can use, but they're also going to use the temperature gun camera to look for where there's cold spots on the walls. And that tells them that air, is either, they can sometimes tell where it's leaking with that, or just where there's no insulation. And, heat is, moving through the wall or whatever. So,
Thank you.
yeah, there's a few different ways, but yes, that's what they're looking for.
Other board members, questions?
I only had those couple.
Mr. Limbeck is our building inspector.
Just so I'm not picking just on ag buildings. Does your outreach program remind homeowners that they need a building permit before they start switching out HVAC equipment?
No.
And does your program meet New York State Energy Code 2020 requirements?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, it's for energy, the energy code is for new buildings.
Well,
Only,
depending on what they're doing, if you're getting into building envelope and, heating systems, but I'm more concerned with getting a building permit when they're talking about, you're working with natural gas or propane to shut it off, you're running new electric lines, you're doing HVAC type stuff. That's something we require a building permit for.
Yeah, so I'm to be honest with you, I am doing the front end outreach stuff, and then our partner contractors are doing the majority of the actual work on the home. And I can assure you that they are doing, And I'm not positive exactly what they do on the back end to like clear all the paperwork stuff. But I imagine they're meeting the requirements of like what they have to do to actually like, get the, so they meet. I could put you in touch with, I could ask that question if you're,
Just curious.
yeah. But if you are curious, if you wanted to talk more with, I can consult them on that because those are things that they do when they're dealing with the actual like installation kind of end of it. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Thank
Sorry, I
you.
don't have a better answer for you.
No, that's fine.
I know I appreciate you coming in and speaking with us and getting here after your kickball game and
I appreciate you taking me late. I'm sorry. I was like,
no, you were
if I can make it
flexible with
work, I
us.
always try to get it,
You were
make things work, but,
It worked out and then we made you wait anyway, so.
oh, it's okay, don't worry.
I'd like to
Jerry?
give the board an opportunity to read the material. And we'll put it on the next agenda and make a decision.
Sounds great. And whenever that happens, we
Can I
can,
ask a question by chance?
yeah.
Would it? It's okay if I ask a question to
Sure.
Matt? So the question I have, I'm curious about the heat pumps and how they work.
Sure.
So there's been concern over the last few years about groundwater contamination in town of Rush. We have a lot of wells.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of, my guess is heavy metals or moving parts in these heat pumps. And you're pulling water out of the ground and putting it back into the ground. So has there been any testing on these heat pumps? If there's contamination to drinking water with the use of heat pumps?
That's a good question. So there are actually two different, so I just said this earlier, there's two different types of heat pumps, air source and ground source heat pumps. An air source heat pump is just like an air conditioner. On the outside, it's got the condenser unit outside. It looks almost exactly like an air conditioner, except it flips in reverse, so it can heat and cool. So those units are not doing anything in the ground. So just want to say that outright.
That's the air source, yeah.
Air source, ground source heat pumps, so they're actually not using any, they're closed loops. So they're not exchanging water with the ground. They are
Okay.
basically, how they're installed is there's, I wish I brought it with me. There's,
It's just a coil, right?
Yeah. it's a big
it's a big, basically like plastic pipe that they will, so there's two ways to do it. They do it horizontal loop field where they'll dig up like a small field on your yard. It's not that big, right? But it's a, maybe 20 by 40 area or something like that. And they'll like coil it in the ground and it's maybe like 6 to 8 feet down. And the other way to do it, if you have less land, is you would have a drill rig come and they would drill it like a water well. It'd be like, they want to drill everything 400 or 500 feet deep if they can. They can't drill that deep everywhere, but they drill pretty deep. And then they'll do like 1 or 2 or 3 of those wells for a home. And they're closed loops. So the pipe goes down all the way down to the bottom and it'll come all the way back on top, goes down the next well up and then back into the house. So, and it's like a salt water, essentially what they're circulating through there, but there's no water exchange with the ground.
Okay.
But I appreciate your, like,
Thank you
that's a
for clarifying
good
that.
concern because I would be concerned too.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate the time. I hope that y'all vote in favor and I wish I brought them, but one thing we did in Penfield was we made jackets for those brochures. So it was like a slip of paper we put on the outside and it just described, it said, this is a partnership with the town of Penfield and Heat Smart Monroe, and here's why we want to do this. We want to help you save money and get the incentives and all that. So we can definitely develop something like that for Rush and just kind of rebrand it. Also, another thing I wanted to share with you is that we are having an open house. We're doing an open house series for some homes that have heat pumps. And the next one is July 9th. So if anyone's interested, you can come, totally free event, come check out someone who has a heat pump, how it works in their home. It'll be cooling in July, right? But it'll still be a cool way to see it. If you're interested, does anyone want a slip of these?
Sure, well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could pass them around.
Just put it on the counter.
Yeah, if you want, hey, the more they, and the first two of these have already happened.
Definitely might be, do you want to give Pam a couple more?
Yeah,
so
why
she
don't
can
you
put
give them to
that's what I
Pam?
would
We
do.
can
That's a
grab them
good
from her.
idea.
Sure, yeah,
We
absolutely.
could make copies of them. She could put
Right.
those on.
Cool, I'm gonna, yeah. just take those. Cool, yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Please come if you can. It's like you know, like we'll have like refreshments and stuff and all that, so, cool.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate the time, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drive
Matt.
safely.
Thank you.
That's good. Can use
He's got his
5,000.
first client already. Need two more.
That's right. Okay. Get my head back into farming.
Yep, we were, so we,
Did we have to talk about permits and or outside storage? I know that was on one of the things and I had shared that with you. I didn't know if it was
I
part of the conversation or.
as far as the outdoor storage goes, I wasn't prepared to do anything on
Okay, no
outside storage
problem.
at this point.
I'll just put it for later.
So maybe at the next one, next month, maybe we can
Yep.
touch on that if that works.
I can make a comment about that. Considering what I went through several years ago when I was doing code enforcement work. I met with Dr. Bob Summers, who was the director of agriculture or something.
Ag and markets.
Ag and markets.
Yeah.
And he constantly reminded me that it's hard to run a farm without storing stuff outside.
Yeah.
So the revealing of that information is very important.
Yep, that'll be something that we'll look into more and hopefully be a little more prepared to delve into that next month, or who knows, maybe next month's gonna be busy dealing with what we brought up originally today too, so
Absolutely.
we'll get to it.
And
Okay,
it's 120-55 if you need to know the session.
for outside storage,
That's outside storage of materials.
120-65,
55.
55. I thought we'd already done a 65.
Thank you, Robert. So the only other thing that I had that I wanted to talk about, I don't know what else there was, and this was something, it doesn't even necessarily apply to farms for that matter. John, I think you had brought this up, thank you, at our last workshop, as far as, Mark David had mentioned something to you about adopting a town-wide setback.
Mark and I had some questions as we looked through different code sections this year. And he did bring up, why do we have a difference for R20 as we do R30? And it's basically because the lot sizes are smaller in the R20. So you have a smaller, I think it's just a rear setback.
Well, I think he's talking about from the center line.
Right, we're talking
The
about.
center
between-
line, the
between-
110
between
versus the
state and
100.
roads,
Oh,
state,
stands in the
county,
right of
town
way.
roads.
We've,
I called it setbacks, I should have said.
we
Front
changed,
setback,
when
yeah.
we did the building permit section of the fee schedule that was adopted at the January 12th meeting, we had taken Monroe County and New York State driveway permits off of our fee schedule because they were already getting they were paying the fee to the county or the
Right.
state, so we didn't want to double dip. But Mark didn't know why we had a separate setback for county and state versus town road. And that's not something that the county or the state establish. We've talked to them and they're like, the town can set it at whatever they want. And
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was always set by whoever. was-
Yeah, no, New York State has told me they don't care.
Yeah, I wouldn't really see the point.
Yeah, so he said, why don't we just make it 100 for any type of road in the town, and that way we're
Because that's what the
consistent.
town roads are.
Yeah, that's what the town roads are, and we had, right now, we've got 110 feet for
State
county
county.
and state.
So that was the only other thing. So I didn't know where everybody else on the board stood on that. I'm in favor of it. I think it makes it easier on
Yeah, I
everybody.
like the simplification.
It's fair and consistent across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, 120-18.
120-18.
As long as it's not dictated by another entity,
Right.
Right.
then why not?
Yeah, like you said, I always thought, yeah, I thought
And
the state and county
Right, that
said
was
it.
the first I'd heard when
And
John
John brought
shared
it up
that,
at the-
what Mark David had shared,
Yeah.
so.
So how do we want to approach that? Robert, is that something that you and David want to write up?
Yeah, this is very simple. So we're just changing numbers, just like we did for the, sort of like how we did for the
That
fences.
shouldn't affect any other code anywhere, John, that you're aware of?
Not
No,
in the
it's just
town.
in the
It's all in
setback section.
dimensions, so
Right, so,
that'd be really simple.
So let me just be clear. So right now, the district, no, excuse me. Yes, district, all residential districts type of road, state or county setback is 110. Whereas for all residential districts type of road, all others, that's not a state or county road, is 100. So we want to change the state or county to also be 100. Is that what I'm saying?
Uniform across.
yeah, everything same as town.
And
Well,
then for commercial, go ahead.
I'm just thinking, we're thinking about this as it applies to farm stands.
No, we're thinking about this is the whole town.
Townwide.
That's why I said this is not solely for farm. This is a townwide thing.
Farm stands is 10 feet, I think we said 10 feet off the edge of pavement or fit.
The
whatever that
temporary-
was.
For
Temporary
temporary,
one.
Yeah,
temporary.
this
That's a
is-
different
Yeah,
definition.
this would be for
Everything,
buildings on any.
Anything and everything.
yes.
Mhm.
Forget my question.
So for commercial, state or county 140, commercial, industrial, limited industrial, state or county 140, all others 110.
Hmm.
RB, residential business,
No.
We don't have an RB. Well,
Well,
not on the
it's-
book.
Well,
It's in the code. Our five's in the code too, but we have nothing.
restricted
from-
business,
Restricted business.
state, county, or town 140 from center line of road.
What do we have in town that's restricted business? Is that, I don't even think that's even on the zoning map. I know, that's just like our R5 and other ones.
Okay.
So is
We have
that,
no industrial, we have LI now.
so is that something that we take out of the code then?
Well, no,
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 the
it's
code-
still
The
there. We
code
just don't,
defines restricted business.
We
So
just
you
don't
have
have
the
any
township
map.
code.
Oh, okay.
And the
okay.
Change the map.
the comprehensive
Yeah,
plan
okay.
will be looking into that, but as far
Okay.
as
Commercial.
commercial and
limited
industrial, limited industrial.
140, state or county, all others 100. You don't have to change that. I'm going into that code and you want
No,
to change. you might as
no,
well.
absolutely. I'm thinking of industrial, 100 feet versus, does 40 feet make a difference?
I don't think it does. Personally, I don't. What's 40 feet?
What
It's-
about parking? I mean, you have other issues for
Yeah,
setback, why
but-
you need deeper.
Sure, but I don't think that that's a setback issue. I think then that would have to go into for an industrial build.
It would be a setback
Mhm.
For the-
for a parking.
Yeah, but couldn't, I mean, wouldn't that be for that project? They would have to show in their plan where the parking was gonna be. If that
Yeah.
parking was, then the parking would have to go to the back of that lot.
Well,
Correct.
it would have to meet the setbacks wherever it was. Otherwise, they would have to get a variance
Right.
if they wanted to go to 100 feet or.
No, but I'm saying if you switch that from 140 to 100, Gene was asking, what about parking? Well, if you didn't have enough room for the parking there, for a large parking lot in the front, then you would have to move the parking to the back of that lot.
Or get a variance.
Okay.
Or the code might currently, I'd have to look, the code might currently say, all employees must park in the back and only visitors.
Right,
can park-
I'm just trying to differentiate, residence or something else versus, a commercial business where you would typically have parking and it's a bit different kind of layout potentially.
I
That this
got-
is not as easy as we thought to have, a blanket 100 feet or 110 feet, or whatever for everything.
For residential.
For
I'm okay with
residential,
100
I'm
feet.
okay with the 100 feet for R20 and R30 and.
I am too.
But
So I
I,
can make
I am
that
too.
And at the discussion, if
When we get
if
to
we
that
had more
point.
time to think about it and you want to change, that's an easy thing to add. So,
okay,
Okay,
Works for me.
but I still think for commercial, we might need the deeper
And
setback
industrial, the light industrial.
and light industrial. Yep.
And it may make sense, again, whatever the town board wants, it makes sense to, if the idea is to line up state or county roads versus all other roads, instead of 100, make it 140, so you don't have 140 and 100, depending on the type of road. But I will leave it until you tell me what you want.
Okay,
Okay,
Fee schedule.
yeah, we can do that, and also, I was just gonna introduce the battery before Wednesday, but no, we can do the fee schedule. I didn't have anything prepared for them with it yet, because I wasn't sure we're gonna get to it, but
Well, I know the stuff for the building department was set.
yep,
I know that the planning board sent in some descriptors. And I didn't know if there was anything more that needed to be done before you guys could schedule a public hearing and get a resolution voted on, just so we can get, these changes into the fee schedule and get them.
right,
And like I said, I'm set with the building. And I know Mrs. Morelli has been publishing the planning board changes. I don't know, I think those are all set. I haven't heard anything otherwise.
yeah, I think we should, they're not yet incorporated into one document, like, before and after, which I think we should, to be able to explain what we're changing, or, for building, for planning and zoning, the way it is right now versus the proposed changes in one document.
If I may add something too. The changes are being discussed by the town board, and the office that collects those fees needs to know what you're going to be explaining to the customer playing that, because you may be changing those fees and I do not know how to explain it or how to figure out.
Well, I would recommend, Pam, that whatever gets changed, or even the way it exists now, that, you get together with the building inspector, with the planning board chair and the zoning board chair, to just make sure that everybody is in sync, because you'll have to apply that, right? Is it, Pam, is what you're saying?
I would like to be included in it, because if I'm the one collecting it, I need to know.
But you just, in terms of, the town board sets the rates. And then I think it's just a matter, of, explaining, or, how it should be applied, no?
I think in addition to that, when Pam tells somebody you owe the town $250, many people say, why is that? And that's, I think, what she's referring to.
And
Well,
for-
that's what the chart will show. This.
The
Why?
chart may show that, but someone at the front counter is going to be asking me the question, what is this for? I want to know what it's for.
What's the breakdown of the charge?
What's the breakdown? What's it for? Or if I'm trying to explain it to them, I need to know how, that I'm explaining it properly. Because one of the chairs has pointed out and asked, did you charge this? Did you charge that? Well, the way I come up with a charge is different than understanding wise. So if we're not together on that, that's something that we need to make sure that I understand, not the fee that you're charging, but what it's for.
No, I totally agree that there should be a meeting or a workshop or something with between your office, Pam, and the chairs, just so it's all clear, and and John, of course, and then go through various scenarios so that you would have that understanding about how it should be applied, and that everybody's on board. I think that would be a good idea.
then I would hope that if there's ever a question, people ask those questions, but I mean, until we get this, if there are, I mean, for years, if there were questions, right? How did you figure it out if there was Because none of this is new. It's just different numbers, right?
Higher numbers.
With additional things.
Yeah, well, now the questions are coming. Why did you charge this? Why did you charge that? And this is how I came up with it. Well, no one's ever asked previously. How come we didn't charge this? Or how come we didn't charge that? Because this is how I understood it.
But I
Yep.
think if, it, comes to light that maybe things need to be explained, before someone else comes up to the window and has to pay a fee for something, for example, so that everybody is on board. A behind the scenes meeting is all I'm saying.
Well, even if I come to a planning or zoning board meeting so that all the board members understand what the fees are for.
That's a good idea.
Won't the next item of business, including this, be a vote?
We have to schedule a public hearing because it is a change to the code, because is the fee schedule
Schedule's in the code.
is in the code, so we have to schedule a public hearing.
Why couldn't we go to that chart at that public hearing and have someone who's an articulate speaker, such as John Limbeck, and say, well, here we are raising dog license. I know this isn't part of that, but
Well, I can show the changes that I've made.
Well,
They're
I color coded.
Right.
Building and planning is red, it says new.
There-
Planning is
but you could
blue.
explain
Yeah,
the
there are several
rationale.
reasons. We've broken out some items that we used to try to hide under, or we did them under one thing, and we're trying to make it clearer, or it matches our ISP system, which has that actual permit, and we never had the fee.
Yeah.
And the change in cost reflects some of the additional inspections we've got to do now based on what the state says.
I think that would be a good thing.
I do have one clarification for Robert.
Yes,
We,
and I don't have these in front of me, so you're.
that's okay. It's just a term,
Okay.
legal versus attorney. Because in 2020, in the fee schedule, we added that additional verb terms.
You added- you added-
All legal and engineering fees incurred by the zoning board in the review of a variance are to be charged to the applicant plus a 50% that has increased from 2020. But the question is, and I heard it at the planning board meeting, at one point it was legal, at one point it was attorney, now we're back to legal. What is the best term
Yeah.
for an applicant being noticed that they may have to pay for engineering fees, but we've also added in the legal. Is it legal or attorney?
I think it's a distinction, not a difference, but that
Well,
being,
that's where the.
I do see a difference.
but,
You are the attorney for the town.
right,
You don't charge that to the attorney or you don't charge them as the attorney for the town. You charge that as a legal
That's
part of their review.
yeah, so I will charge, they're a separate matter in our time system, so I will
Right.
charge my attorney's fees, my time to them.
You don't have to give us an answer now,
Yeah,
but just
I'll have to talk
before,
about it with David and think
Okay.
about it. I think at the planning board meeting, I think I said legal.
that's what I heard. That's why I switched
I
it back
told
to
them
legal.
at the time. And part of that is, my thought process then was, if for whatever reason the reason why I would normally choose legal in a different sense, because sometimes we have legal fees that aren't necessarily attorney's fees. So we have, court costs or filing fees. They're legal fees, but they're not attorneys. They're not my attorney time. This situation is probably never going to happen, but legal fees is a broader scope. So that's why I suggested the planning board. I'd still like to
right.
take a look at that.
Would it make sense to develop an SOP for this once we get it squared away so that, we have continuity going forward with this?
Wouldn't be a bad
SOP,
thing.
what's
Standard
SOP?
operating
Oh.
procedure, just.
Sorry.
document-
You weren't the only one.
I'm sorry.
Or standard practice.
Standard operating procedure for
Just
what?
that, first of all, these are the fees, it's not just the building fees, it's all the fees for the town.
No, I clarified that with everyone, that this
right.
was not your fee,
I
this is the
understand,
town
but,
of Rush fee
You know, what's the
schedule.
process for changing these, you know, and having that process so that the town clerk understands and can justify, you know, this is what that, you know, $200 is. It's advertising, it's review time, it's,
Sure.
you know, that type of thing. So,
Yeah, once we get to those fees, we can move on to that part. And you've given me the planning board, the zoning board, so, and I shared it with the board, I'll share it again, as well as with Robert. And because it's not finalized, Pam, once I get it finalized, I will get it to you, which it should be once I get legal or attorney, whatever you tell me,
I can do that tomorrow.
so it can be posted.
Anything else?
The only other thing on the agenda for,
So we didn't have an agenda.
we don't, on Wednesday, we don't have an agenda, was large scale battery storage. And the moratorium was done in 2021, the end of 2021. So a lot of our area towns around here have adopted local laws on either complete prohibition of large scale battery storage or something else, Caledonia, Livonia, I think Lima, I'll double check. Avon, we were ahead of the game on the moratorium, and then
Now
things
we're
kind
behind
of,
the eight ball.
now, well, yes and no. Right now, we have no large scale battery storage proposed, but we don't want to be behind the eight ball. So, Attorney Mancuso in 2021 had drafted a local law, which we never got to. And I have forwarded it to Robert and David for their review. And so it's something that, is this something that we as a board want to pursue?
I think we should at least look into it.
I think we should, because given our favorite solar customer and all the changes that we've incurred dealing with them, I wouldn't want them to find out that we're not covered and come in with a battery storage proposal.
Yeah, I haven't seen the law. I'd like to look at it.
It's out of date.
Well, I
Right,
mean, after David and
right,
Robert.
once David and
review it,
Robert get a
yeah.
chance to.
Yeah, I'd like to see that done.
Yes.
Is there anything you can add to that, Robert? Did I explain it well enough? or
Yeah,
not
so,
really?
and it was based off the Livonia's law, which is what I have in front of me, is that right? So the non-commercial, it wasn't a complete prohibition, non-commercial, so it was a complete prohibition of commercial, but for non-commercial battery energy storage systems, which was less than 600 kilowatts per hour, it was allowed in all zoning districts upon issuance of a zoning permit. And then they went through how to get a zoning permit. So that's the way I will draft it. And if you say, look at it and the town board says, we don't want it at all, commercial or non-commercial, we can redraft it a different way. But I'll go based on what Attorney Mancuso put together, which was based on the Livonia law.
I think I'm all right with that. We can look over it, and if there's anything we want to tweak, then we'll tweak it and meet on it again, right?
I just wanted to bring it up here because it was a workshop and
Yeah, no, I think it's good. Let's move it forward.
Great for residential uses.
Agreed. Oh, for residential uses, I'm not as adamant about that. You know,
I thought battery storage was part of a residential.
It can
Really?
be. It doesn't
Root
have to
system.
be. It can be part of a residential, and it's, it's a small system.
very small.
And that's
Yes.
where that Robert mentioned under a certain kill, you know.
Yeah, right.
oh,
Right.
okay.
If you want to put panels on your house and put a battery storage system with it, I'm not as
Well,
strong
Generac
feeling
is
about that.
marketing that now. You'll see it a lot on TV where they're showing the batteries
Yeah.
can be stacked in your garage.
Yeah,
In
Oh,
your
yeah.
garage, yeah, I am okay with that.
And I don't, frankly, I don't know what 600 kilowatts per hour looks like.
I don't either, so I was gonna look
Not
that
not
up
the
and
one
see.
to ask,
Call your
but that's
son.
the
I don't
limit
know
that
if
was
it's
set.
All right.
Anything else?
No, that is all I have unless someone else has something else.
I'm all set, Jerry.
Oh, sorry. Do we need a resolution, town clerk and supervisor, to move our Or we're gonna do that on Wednesday, the workshop in July.
Thought
To
that
the
was on
5th.
the agenda for
Tuesday.
Wednesday.
Didn't we
To
get
Tuesday.
It's
that?
on the.
It's on the agenda, okay, never mind.
I thought I saw
We
that.
don't need to,
We'll just do it on Wednesday, she said.
right, Dan, anything else? John,
I'm good, thank you.
Pam,
No.
Robert,
Jean?
Jean? Oh, Jean, Jean, is there
Yeah,
any,
no, I'm good.
I'm sorry.
I know the feeling when I was home. so-
Oh, my God, yeah, all right. Well, being there's no further business to conduct, I declare this meeting adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.
Night, Jean.
Good night.
Oh, very much.
Look at that cutie pie over there. Turned 38 today.
Oh, yeah.
We're much older than that, huh?
I'll be 40. I gotta